Imagine this scene. You are 12 years old, living in a small Bulgarian village in the middle of the 16th century. Morning fog settles over the valley like a veil as you help your father guide the sheep across the fields. The soft ringing of bells around their necks is a sound you have heard your entire life, steady, familiar, comforting. Inside the house, your mother prepares breakfast, freshly baked bread and warm goat's milk, flavors that mean home, safety, and everything you believe the world to be. Then the sound comes. Heavy hooves strike stone, sharp and thunderous. Your father's face drains of color. Your mother drops the clay bowl in her hands, and it shatters on the floor, just as your life is about to shatter with it. Everyone in the village knows what those hoofbeats mean. The Sultan's collectors have arrived. You hide behind a wooden cart as mounted Ottoman officials dismount. Their silk garments are immaculate despite days of travel. They carry lists and scrolls, their eyes sweeping over the villagers with the detached precision of traders inspecting livestock. When one of them points directly at you, your mother collapses to the ground, pleading in desperation, speaking words they neither understand nor care to hear. Your father does not move. He knows that resistance would mean death, not just for him, but for all of you. You are taken away with rehearsed promises. You are told you will serve the Sultan, that you will rise in status, that this is an honor. But as the cart carries you farther from your home, the only sound you hear is your mother's sobbing, fading into the distance. You will never see her again. This is how your new life begins, as a palace boy, a ghulam, inside the most powerful empire on earth. And the horrors waiting behind palace walls will one day make you long for those quiet mornings spent watching sheep drift through mist-covered valleys. The journey toward the imperial capital becomes your first lesson in cruelty. You march for weeks with dozens of other boys across harsh terrain. Food is scarce. Sleep comes in the open air or beneath crude shelters that offer little protection. Those who fall behind, the sick, the weak, the hopeless, are left where they collapse. No one stops. No one looks back. Before reaching the outskirts of Istanbul, you learn the rule that governs your new existence. Weakness means death. Survival belongs only to the strong, the clever, or those who can adapt quickly enough. Beside you walks a boy a little older, perhaps 14, taken from a Greek fishing village. His name is Nikos, though he whispers that he will soon be forbidden to use it. On the third night of the march, he attempts to escape. He is caught before he can get far. The guards drag him back and beat him in front of everyone. His screams echo through the countryside. You shut your eyes, but the lesson burns itself into your memory. There is no escape. There is no resistance. By the time the outskirts of Istanbul come into view, you have learned how to survive by becoming invisible. You speak only when addressed. You move quietly. You avoid attention when the guards' gazes turn sharp and predatory. You watch boys vanish during the night, some caught trying to flee, others simply unable to endure another day. Their absence in the line is a constant reminder of how easily you could be next. The first sight of the city should inspire awe. Towering minarets pierce the sky. The immense dome of Hagia Sophia dominates the horizon. Beyond it stretches the vast palace complex that will soon define your life. But instead of wonder, you feel only a heavy dread settle in your stomach. This city represents everything you have lost,
and everything you fear you are about to become. The first selection begins. Ottoman officials separate the surviving boys according to perceived potential. The process is meticulous and humiliating. Your teeth are inspected like those of an animal. Your reflexes are tested. You are ordered to recite whatever letters or numbers you know. Your height is measured, your skin examined for imperfections, your face evaluated with the detached judgment of art dealers appraising a sculpture. The most attractive and intelligent are chosen for palace education at the Enderun school. Others are assigned to military training. But for those selected for palace service, an entirely different ordeal lies ahead, one that will test not only physical endurance, but the ability of the soul to withstand systematic erasure. You are among those chosen for the Enderun, housed within the walls of Topkapi Palace. The officials studying you notice your clear complexion, alert eyes, and quick mind. They smile as they make their decision. At the time, you do not understand that these smiles are not kind. They are the smiles of predators who believe they have found something valuable.
The Enderun School is often remembered as an elite institution designed to educate promising youths for imperial service. In formal terms, this is accurate, but such descriptions fail to capture the reality faced by boys who entered its gates without choice. You are instructed in multiple languages: Ottoman Turkish, Persian, Arabic. You study mathematics, law, history, astronomy, and literature. You are trained in music, calligraphy, etiquette, and courtly behavior. By the standards of the era, this education is exceptional, yet it is inseparable from control. The palace becomes the totality of your existence. It is a vast network of corridors, chambers, and guarded spaces designed to isolate those within from the outside world. You live in communal dormitories deep inside the palace grounds, separated from society by walls, guards, and rigid hierarchy. Over time, the idea of escape fades, not because it becomes impossible, but because it becomes unimaginable. The dormitory is silent and impersonal. Rows of narrow beds line the walls, identical and closely spaced. Privacy does not exist. At night, the air is heavy with suppressed emotion, quiet crying, whispered voices, the constant awareness of supervision. Even in darkness, you are never truly alone. Any remaining connection to your former life is systematically removed. Personal objects are confiscated. Your name is replaced. Your previous beliefs are declared invalid. Conversion is required, framed as transformation rather than coercion. The ritual is public, formal, and irreversible. You comply outwardly. Inwardly, you hold on to memory, family voices, fragments of home, though you understand that these memories must remain hidden. What defines palace life is not only discipline, but dependency. Advancement depends on approval. Protection depends on favor. Safety depends on your ability to read power correctly and respond as expected. These expectations are rarely stated openly, yet they are understood by everyone within the system. Older students instruct younger ones not only in academic matters, but in survival. They explain which behaviors invite punishment, which attract protection, and which draw unwanted attention. Guidance is offered in exchange for loyalty, obedience, and compliance with unspoken rules. You quickly learn that refusal carries consequences. Isolation, harsher discipline, stalled advancement, these are common outcomes for those who fail to conform. Compliance, on the other hand, often results in tangible benefits, lighter workloads, better living conditions, greater security.
The system rewards adaptation and punishes resistance. Authority within the palace is enforced by multiple layers. Supervisors and officials rely on intermediaries, older students and attendants who maintain order and ensure conformity. Many of these enforcers were once subjected to the same pressures and now perpetuate them, believing this to be the natural structure of palace life. What makes the system particularly effective is normalization. No single act appears extraordinary when viewed in isolation. Expectations are framed as tradition. Dependency is described as mentorship. Silence is interpreted as discipline. Over time, these distortions become routine. The psychological impact is profound. Cut off from family, identity, and autonomy, boys adapt in different ways. Some become highly strategic, learning to anticipate authority and align themselves accordingly. Others withdraw emotionally, performing their duties with mechanical precision while remaining internally detached. You witness both paths around you. One boy excels by demonstrating flawless obedience and attentiveness. His conditions improve, his future appears secure, yet something essential in him disappears, his connection to home, to self, to empathy. Another boy resists quietly. He follows rules but refuses deeper conformity. Over time, he becomes invisible, overlooked, marginalized. Eventually, he is reassigned or removed. His absence is never explained. You attempt to exist between these extremes, adapting enough to survive while preserving an inner sense of self. But the palace is designed to erode such balance. Each day reinforces the same lesson. Survival requires surrender, and surrender reshapes who you are.
Occasionally, this hidden world reaches the outside world. European visitors to the Ottoman court sometimes catch glimpses of palace life, though their understanding is limited and shaped by their own assumptions. What they witness unsettles them. A Venetian envoy in the 16th century records his discomfort at the visible intimacy between high-ranking officials and their young male attendants. He describes boys scarcely older than children, dressed in silk and adorned with jewels, moving through the halls with practiced obedience. Their closeness to powerful men, he notes, suggests relationships that far exceed acceptable boundaries between master and servant. A century later, a French diplomat offers an even starker account. During a formal reception, he observes palace pages gliding through the corridors like exquisite birds confined to gilded cages. Their eyes remain lowered, yet their bodies are displayed deliberately. He remarks on the possessive gestures of certain officials and the unmistakable fear that flashes across the boys' faces when summoned. Though his words are cautious, the implication is unmistakable. Inside the palace, physical conditions amplify the psychological violence in carefully calculated ways. Privacy does not exist. You sleep, study, and live under constant surveillance. Every movement is regulated, every hour accounted for. You are woken before dawn for prayers you are forced to memorize. Meals are adequate but tightly rationed, delivered at fixed times. Days follow rigid schedules that leave no space for reflection, grief, or resistance. Discipline is swift and often designed to humiliate rather than correct. Punishments are public and inventive. Speaking your native language, holding on to old customs, showing reluctance toward your assigned role, any of these can result in beatings, isolation, or confinement in narrow chambers barely large enough to lie down in.
You witness a boy named Milos punished for praying in the manner of his former faith. He is stripped naked and forced to stand in the courtyard from sunrise to sunset, while other students are encouraged to mock him. The message is unmistakable. Your past is not merely forbidden, it is shameful. The palace operates its own internal economy, one that deepens exploitation and binds you further to the system. Privileges are earned through obedience, academic success, or personal favor. Better food, softer bedding, cleaner clothes, access to books or musical instruments. These small comforts become invaluable. They create dependence, they encourage competition, they turn boys against one another. You learn to navigate this economy with a caution far beyond your years. You discover that helping older students with their lessons can sometimes shield you from their advances. You notice that excelling in certain subjects attracts instructors who may intervene on your behalf. You learn that exaggerated enthusiasm for your new identity can buy moments of relative safety. Escape is attempted but rarely succeeds. The palace's position on a peninsula surrounded by water makes flight nearly impossible. Those who try and fail are punished publicly. You witness the return of a boy who attempted to swim across the Golden Horn. He is dragged back barely conscious. The beating he receives leaves him permanently damaged, both physically and mentally. He remains among you afterward, a living warning, broken, silent, a reminder of the cost of defiance. Even those few who manage to flee face another kind of doom. Years inside the palace erase the life they once knew. Their families may not recognize them. Their villages may reject them as traitors or converts. They possess skills useful only within imperial service. Most are recaptured. Others drift without purpose, unable to reclaim an identity that no longer exists. As you grow older within the system, survival demands deeper compromises. Intelligence, adaptability, and carefully measured submission keep you alive. But you begin to understand something far disturbing. The men who control you, your instructors, supervisors, and overseers, were once boys like you. They were taken, broken, remade, and now they perpetuate the system that destroyed them. This realization forces a terrible choice. You can resist and likely be destroyed, or you can embrace the system, rising within it and eventually helping select, condition, and control the next generation of boys. Many choose the latter. It is easier to become a predator than to remain prey forever. The ceremony known as Chikma marks the end of palace education and the beginning of imperial service. After years of abuse disguised as refinement, you emerge fluent in multiple languages, trained in administration, diplomacy, art, and science. But you also emerge altered. Your understanding of power is inseparable from exploitation. Trust feels dangerous. Intimacy feels transactional. Parts of your humanity have been carefully stripped away. For many graduates, advancement simply means entering another environment where favors, obedience, and survival remain intertwined. Those assigned to government positions navigate courts where the same lessons continue to apply. Those sent into military service carry unhealed wounds, becoming either ruthless enforcers or hollow men struggling to find meaning in lives shaped by coercion.
As the years pass, survival within the palace reshapes you in ways that are difficult to recognize from the inside. What once felt unbearable slowly becomes routine. What once inspired fear becomes expectation. Adaptation is not framed as loss, but as maturity. Those who endure long enough begin to understand the deeper purpose of the system. The palace does not simply educate, it manufactures loyalty. By removing boys from their families, erasing their identities, and rebuilding them within a closed world of hierarchy and reward, the empire creates servants whose sense of belonging is inseparable from imperial power. Gratitude, fear, ambition, and dependency intertwine until allegiance feels natural rather than imposed. As you grow older, new responsibilities replace the vulnerabilities of childhood. You are trusted with tasks, with supervision, with authority over those who arrive after you. The skills you learned to survive, reading power, anticipating expectations, managing silence, are now presented as leadership. And with that comes another choice. You begin to see younger boys enter the palace the way you once did, frightened, disoriented, clinging to fragments of memory they are not allowed to keep. They look to older students for guidance, for protection, for explanation. You understand what awaits them. At this stage, resistance no longer looks heroic, it looks futile. Speaking out changes nothing and risks everything you have endured to preserve. Most choose the path that feels safer, participation. Not always with enthusiasm, but with resignation. This is how the system sustains itself, not through constant force, but through continuity. Those who rise within palace ranks often convince themselves that what they experienced was necessary, that hardship produced strength, that discipline justified suffering. This rationalization becomes essential for survival, because acknowledging the full truth would make their own complicity unbearable. Graduation from palace training marks entry into imperial service. On paper, it is a success story. You emerge educated, multilingual, disciplined, and skilled in administration or command. You are placed into positions of authority, civil offices, military roles, advisory posts. Yet the internal consequences remain. Many former palace students struggle with trust, intimacy, and autonomy. Relationships are filtered through power. Loyalty feels transactional. Obedience feels safer than vulnerability. The patterns learned in childhood do not disappear, they simply adapt to new environments. Some graduates become efficient administrators and commanders, enforcing imperial will with precision. Others carry unresolved psychological wounds, expressing them through rigidity, cruelty, or emotional detachment. The system does not distinguish between these outcomes. Both are considered functional. Official discourse within the empire carefully manages how the palace system is discussed. Regulations exist that nominally prohibit abuse. Manuals emphasize discipline, education, and moral refinement. Criticism is dismissed as misunderstanding or foreign exaggeration. The effectiveness of the system is its strongest defense. It produces capable officials, it ensures loyalty, it maintains continuity. The human cost is excluded from the calculation. Contemporary writers occasionally acknowledge that palace training demands great sacrifice, but they frame this sacrifice as transformative rather than destructive. Suffering is rebranded as refinement. Loss is reframed as opportunity. What this language conceals is the reality that many boys do not emerge transformed, but altered in irreversible ways. The palace system occupies a troubling space in history because it combines genuine educational advancement with institutionalized coercion. It offers opportunity while denying agency. It cultivates intellect while eroding autonomy. The benefits and the harm are inseparable.
This dynamic is not unique to one empire or era. Across history, powerful institutions have justified exploitation by embedding it within systems of prestige, discipline, and advancement. What distinguishes the palace system is the scale, structure, and normalization of this process. By the later centuries of the empire, changes in military technology, administration, and social values gradually reduce reliance on palace-trained elites. The system evolves, fragments, and eventually fades. But for those who passed through it at its height, reform comes too late. Their childhoods are already gone. Many rise to prominence and leave traces in historical records, appointments, titles, achievements. Others disappear entirely, known only through administrative entries noting their arrival and reassignment. Their internal lives, their losses, and their adaptations remain unrecorded. Today, the palace still stands. Its corridors are admired for their architecture. Its chambers are praised for their artistry. Visitors hear stories of innovation, governance, and imperial sophistication. What they do not hear are the quieter histories, the fear, the silence, the internal negotiations that defined daily life for countless children. The walls remember, even if history does not. The legacy of the palace system is not only found in the officials it produced, but in the reminder it offers, that power often sustains itself by reshaping the most vulnerable, and that institutions capable of extraordinary achievement can also be capable of profound harm. To remember these stories is not to deny history's complexity, but to acknowledge its cost. And in acknowledging that cost, we recognize that behind every empire's grandeur stand lives shaped without consent, children who learned to survive systems that demanded their obedience while quietly consuming their childhoods.
Centuries have passed since boys like you first crossed the palace gates, yet the physical spaces remain. The stone corridors, the courtyards, the carefully ordered rooms still stand, preserved as symbols of imperial achievement and artistic refinement. Today, these spaces are visited in silence and admiration. People walk slowly through halls once filled with controlled movement and watchful supervision. They admire the craftsmanship of tiles, the symmetry of arches, the elegance of calligraphy. They hear about administrative brilliance, cultural synthesis, and the empire's ability to cultivate talent from across its territories. What is rarely discussed is the human experience that made this system possible. The official narrative emphasizes success, capable officials, loyal servants, efficient governance. Education is highlighted, discipline is praised. The system is remembered for what it produced, not for what it consumed. Yet beneath every polished achievement lies an unspoken cost. The boys who passed through the palace were not abstractions. They were children with families, languages, and identities that existed long before imperial service defined them. Their adaptation required silence. Their survival demanded compliance. Their advancement often depended on surrendering parts of themselves that could never be recovered. Some became powerful figures whose names appear in historical records. Others vanished entirely, leaving behind no trace beyond enrollment lists and reassignment notes. Their inner lives, the fear, confusion, negotiation, and resilience, were never documented. History often favors outcomes over experiences. Institutions are judged by efficiency, stability, and longevity. The suffering embedded within their mechanisms is easier to ignore, especially when it is systematic rather than chaotic,
normalized rather than overt. But remembering these stories matters, not because they are unique, but because they are familiar. Across different eras and societies, systems of power have repeatedly justified coercion within embedding it in opportunity. Education becomes control, advancement becomes dependency, prestige becomes a shield against accountability. The palace system stands as a clear example of how harm can coexist with refinement, and how cruelty can be rendered invisible when it is structured, ritualized, and productive. For the boys who lived within it, survival meant adaptation, adaptation meant transformation, and transformation often meant loss. Yet even within such systems, human resilience persisted. Some retained empathy despite pressure to suppress it. Some refused to perpetuate harm when given authority. Some carried awareness forward, even when open resistance was impossible. These quiet acts rarely enter official history, but they matter nonetheless. To look back at such systems honestly is not to impose modern judgments on the past, but to recognize patterns that continue into the present. Children remain vulnerable to institutions that promise opportunity while demanding silence. Power still reshapes lives long before consent is possible. The lesson is not confined to one empire. It is a reminder that progress measured only by output can conceal profound harm, and that education without agency becomes something else entirely. The palace walls remain silent, but the responsibility to remember does not. By acknowledging the full complexity of these histories, the achievement and the damage, the opportunity and the cost, we honor those whose lives were shaped without choice. Their stories ask us not simply to admire the past, but to question the systems we build in the present. Because the measure of any society is not only what it creates, but whom it asks to pay the price.